Hello Chameleon Academy, this is Bill Strand, and today I'm going to lead you through a outdoors chameleon project, but this one is for baby chameleons. And you can see I've done the cages back here, and for this video, I'm going to show you how I did it so you can do it as well. Now first, let's review why in the world we'd want to do this in the first place. And this is because outdoor keeping is incredible for the health of chameleons. The natural sunlight with the unfiltered UVB, the ebb and flow of the humidity from day to night, the natural breezes, all of these things are magic for chameleon husbandry and for their health. Now, getting them all of these health benefits is not as simple as just taking your indoors cage and putting it outdoors, because essentially you'd probably kill your chameleon doing that, because outdoors the sun is just so powerful. And so much of what we do in our outdoors setups is to protect from the sun while giving them the benefits of the sun. And so the problem is that the sun is just so hot, and the chameleon, if it's not given the ability to get out of the sun, will quickly overheat or dehydrate and literally could die within an afternoon without the proper cover. So sun is the number one concern. The number two concern is predators. You need to be aware of what's around your chameleon and the setup. Whenever you have them outdoors, you need to be worried about hawks, crows, other birds, snakes, ants. At night, there's possums, raccoons, rats, and so there's a whole host of things you need to watch out for. Now, obviously, I do a lot of outdoor keeping, and so you can be successful without ever having a problem. In fact, I've been keeping these type of screen cages outdoors for many years now, and I've not yet had a break-in. Now, that's not to say that it won't happen, and so I can't guarantee that. You need to maintain vigilance, but it's not as bad as you might think. You just need to be careful about what you leave in the cages, like a lot of extra crickets, dying crickets, that may attract a predator, or ants, especially ants. And you gotta watch out for ants. Anyway, let's get on to building this little baby cage. Now, what chameleons you can use with this method depends upon how big of a cage you use, and you can use any size cage, just use these same principles. In this particular case, I'm going to be using the 16 by 16 by 30 inch tall cage, and this is great for new baby chameleons or the smaller species of chameleons, and so I'm going to show you how to build that. So this is the cage that I'm going to be using. You may recognize this as the cage that comes in the Chameleon kit. That abomination of a product that is just a horrible thing to buy. The only thing useful in that kit is the cage. And so if you have bought a Chameleon kit and you've upgraded right now and you've got it laying around, this is actually a great project where you can actually get some use out of it. I selected this cage because it's a good balance between the small size that I want to be able to have many of them on a table, but a large enough size that I can put enough plants in there that I can give the baby that's in there protection from the sun. Now, there's two main components to being protected from the sun, and that is a dense layer of foliage that the chameleon can hide in, and also a substrate layer. The soil floor provides a cool, humid base to the cage. Without the soil floor, say you use the standard bottom that comes with the screen cage, that will actually reflect the light. And so the sun will bounce off of the floor and hit the chameleon from below, and the sun is hitting the chameleon from above, and so the chameleon has nowhere to go to get out of the sun. So by giving a soil floor, we're giving the chameleon a gradient, especially if it's shaded and moist. And you might be surprised at how cool it can be under those conditions if you give a protected area within the cage. Now, filling the cage with soil is just as simple as taking a bag of organic soil and dumping it in the screen cage. The screen actually does a very good job of holding in the soil. The one thing that a screen side doesn't do very well is hold in the moisture, and so the soil floor inside of a screen cage will dry out very quickly. And we need that to hold in moisture to keep the plants healthy and growing. So my solution to this was to create a planter box around the bottom of the cage. To do this, I used coroplast. Coroplast is expensive and easy to find. It's that material that they make lawn signs out of, for political signs or real estate signs, and it can be found at home improvement stores or even purchased online at Amazon. It's light, it's easy to cut, and it does the job perfectly. Now there's going to be many approaches to how to do this. I'm going to give you the one that I like, and you can follow along. I'm going to be wanting to put the coroplast on the sides before I assemble the cage because I want to be able to screw down the coroplast to the aluminum frame on a hard, flat surface and not when the cage is already assembled. Now to do this, we still need to give access to the assembly screws for the cage so we can put the cage together. And to make this easy, I've created a template that you can download and print out one-to-one on your printer, cut it out and use it as a template to trace around where you need to cut on the coroplast to give access to the screw holes and the latches in the front. Creating these pieces out of coroplast is as easy as tracing the shape that you want on the coroplast and then cutting it with a utility knife. Now when you're tracing out the cutouts using the template, you need to trace one side and then flip the template over for the other side. The front has these crazy shapes so the latch can still open and close, and the back has a couple of screw holes that need to be kept open. The side is the only one that's somewhat tricky because the back side has a screw while the front doesn't, and so you make only one cutout on the side that's going to be on the back. Once you cut out all these pieces, you put them on the screen frame where is appropriate, and I just take a number 8 screw that's a 1/2 inch long and I push it through the coroplast and into the aluminum frame. This does take a little bit of muscle, but it really isn't that hard. I use 3 or 4 screws per panel. It really doesn't have to be many because the coroplast is not holding the soil in. The screen is doing that. The coroplast is just holding the moisture in. Once you have your cage assembled, make sure you put in the bottom panel that comes with the cage, and then you can pour in the soil. I like to do 6 inches. I use typical organic potting soil. And then I find some appropriately sized plants at the home improvement store that will fill in the cage as much as is possible. Now this may be tricky because every plant that we're going to use will outgrow this cage, so we're going to have to trim. But that means you should be able to find a plant that will fit and will be leafy enough to give them cover. And I plant this plant directly into the soil. Now you may run across a situation where the plant doesn't reach high enough to be of use to the chameleon. Well, we can deal with that by just taking that utility knife and cutting the bottom off of that pot and putting the pot directly in the cage. You automatically get 5 to 6 inches of height. Once you have your plants in, that's the time you can do whatever you want as far as bioactive. Me, I like to put a leaf layer in there and a bunch of branches as is appropriate for the chameleon that's going to be in there. And that's it as far as building this cage. It's really easy. Now the challenge is going to be how you set it up so it gets sunlight but is protected by the sun. This is still a very small cage and babies are very susceptible for dehydration because their bodies are so small. So my approach to this is that I have these cages situated so they get the sunlight in the morning. By 10 o'clock, the sun is blocked by a patio cover, and then they don't get any more direct sun until the very last bits of sunset. And then hydration. Hydration is going to be very important for these chameleons, and you can either do it automatically by setting up an outdoors misting system, and that's if you've got a pretty permanent location, or else you can do it by hand by using a mist adapter for your hose and just by hand go out and spray them down. Feeding is pretty simple. You can release feeders on the side of the cage, have a feeding cup, or I even use some very ripe fruit that I put in there so the wild fruit flies will come and congregate and the chameleons have a smorgasbord presented to them. All right, there you go. It's a perfect weekend project and it's a lot of fun. You can go to the website at Chameleon Academy. The link is going to be down below. From there you can read all of the instructions and you can download that template. Thank you for joining me here. Tomorrow I'm going to go into the different accessories that you can buy for your screen cage. This episode is just one of a series that I'm doing on screen cages. If you'd like to go back to the first episode to catch them all, that link is right here. If you'd like to go to the next video, 24 hours after this releases, the link will be right here. Subscribe to the Chameleon Academy to catch them all, and I will see you tomorrow.